What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. Thank you for tuning in. You know, this is a project that I believe in. This is not about trying to make money. Growing up, my heroes were the people who fought in the Revolutionary War, those simple farmers who took up arms to get rid of a tyranny. You know, the people who fought on the ground in places like Bastogne and Normandy and, you know, Saipan and some of the other battles of World War II. Again, fighting against tyranny. That's what I believe in the most. We need to fight against tyranny. I don't care what side that tyranny is coming from. You know, red or blue, I'm purple. I'm here in the middle just trying to provide some answers, trying to get people to change the way they think, trying to bridge the gap between these two parties. I fucking hate that we only have two parties in this country because I don't think either party represents the common person. You know, they just don't. They don't represent the center. And nowadays it seems like the people who get the votes are the people who squawk on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it the most, you know? We're seeing it right now in our state where Gavin Newsom is mimicking Trump's way of, you know, speaking on socials and things like that. You know, what the hell's that all about? That's not what we need. You know, Gabby, you want to beat Trump, then show him policies that are better than his policies. Shouldn't that be our gauge for who we put in charge? Who has policies that work? Hey, both sides have policies that work. They do, but they also have policies that don't work. And that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to, you know, make the world a little more purple, because quite frankly, I like the color purple a lot more than I like red or blue. Yeah, let's get rolling. You know, I was just kind of thinking about what people stand for. And it got me thinking about, you know, the Democrats, what they're accused of or what they actually do stand for. They stand for welfare for drug addicts. You know, they want to prop people up to allow them to just continue to kill themselves with drugs and alcohol. I don't see how you could argue that. They do. Here in California, we pump billions of dollars into the homeless problem. We never addressed the real problem, which is the drug use, the alcohol, and the untreated mental illness. You know, and playing off of that, they call compassion leaving people on the streets, living in squalor and despair, with no way out, no way up. People on the streets, you know, I'll get into it really quickly here. My brother-in-law, he went to jail for punching his mom. He got out of jail. The state set him up in a few programs. He kind of poo-pooed those. He moved in with a girl that he knew, right? That lasted a month because he couldn't change how he acted. So his brother had to pay for a hotel. They finally found him a room. He was asked to not smoke cigarettes in his room. And after being warned repeatedly, he was evicted. His brother then paid for him to move to another hotel. But instead of just packing up and moving, he didn't answer the door when the movers showed up. He didn't want to move into the hotel. He wanted to take the landlord to court and fight for his tenants' rights to stay in that room, even though he violated their rules. Now, the whole family's getting tired of him. Pretty soon, he'll be on the street. And who does he have to blame? Himself. He didn't try. Everybody gave him clothes. They gave him a bike. They bought him bus passes. They paid for his hotel room. They did everything in their power to try to help this kid. And he poo-pooed it all because all he wanted to do was lay around, be lazy, and do whatever the fuck he wanted. Act however he wanted. You know, those are the people on the streets. People on the streets are beyond the kind of help that families can provide. It needs to be stricter. That's one of the things we passed when we passed Prop 36. If somebody keeps getting arrested for criminal offenses due to drugs, they need to go into rehab. I stand here today with my entire life, my marriage of over 30 years, my daughter who's in her 20s, only because I was given that choice, jail or rehab, and I chose rehab. You know, another thing that the Democrats support is, new word for you, unvetted immigrants. You don't like illegal immigrants? You want to call them undocumented? No, let's call it what it is. They're unvetted. They're unvetted. I'm not saying every single person who came into this country illegally is bad. That is simply not the case. But the numbers we saw under Biden, even a small percentage of those people being, riffraff or criminals or whatever it is, that leads to big problems. And the Democrats don't want to do anything about it. The Democrats are soft on crime. They make up excuses for people, right? But they don't use diversion programs. They don't force people into rehab. They don't force people into the system so the system could sort of put them back on their feet so that maybe once these people are clean and sober and have learned their lesson and have accepted that they need to, perform as a member of society, maybe their families could help them. No. The Democrats are tough on guns. But again, not tough on gun crime. We had a guy here, Gascon in L.A. He didn't use gun enhancements. See? That's a big problem. If you want to restrict my rights, my Second Amendment rights, then you go after the people who criminally use guns. Go after them, but they don't. And even scarier with Democrats is they are soft on the assholes worldwide. They are. We'll look at two examples here. Maduro down in Venezuela. He voids an election, says, oh no, I won. He's still in charge of the country, even though they voted him out of office. That's what you accuse Donald Trump of doing. You say Donald Trump is just going to run for a third term, or he's going to do some sort of end around. You call Donald Trump a dictator, but yet when a dictator actually seizes control of a country, for Biden, crickets. What has Trump done about Maduro? He placed a $50 million bounty on his head as the leader of a government drug cartel. And then when Maduro sends boats up here loaded with drugs, we can argue who sent the boats, doesn't really matter, they came from Venezuela, we sank the ship. That's the action we took against that asshole. What about the assholes in Iran? What about them? They fund terror. They take oil money and give it to terrorist organizations that destabilize the entire region and lead to countless innocent lives being lost. Biden releases what? $10 billion to them? What does Trump do? Big ass bomb up the cornhole. That's the kind of stance we need to take. That is the kind of stance that we need to take in the world. These people are out there trying to bring down our way of life, trying to destroy our values. And they don't support many of our values. If you look at what they support versus what we support, we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And they're funding people to buy AK-47s and explosives and rockets and missiles, and they help them to subjugate the citizens of their country. Look at what people are living with in places like Lebanon or Gaza or Yemen. You've got these radicalized Islamic armies who are terrorizing the country. And they're not doing it for the betterment of the citizen. They're doing it for the betterment of the group. And Iran funds that. And Biden does nothing. Trump did something. That's all I'm saying. I was watching TV, Pluto TV. I love Pluto TV. I love watching riff tracks on there. I watch the BBC Mysteries. I watch the old game shows, Match Game, things like that. And over this last week, I saw two ads that are worth mentioning. One of them, we went through this period of this kind of woke behavior where people were doing this performative bullshit in advertising. We would have an overweight lady on a fitness magazine with the caption, "The New Healthy." Or we had, as everybody knows, we had Dylan Mulvaney sporting a man, biological man, sporting a sports bra. And that's just performative. That's just trying to get those so-called woke points, right? It doesn't really make sense. Men don't need sports bras. I hope they don't. If you are a man that needs a sports bra, you're probably not exercising, so you really don't need a sports bra. But anyhow, I saw an ad that really said to me, hey, we've made some real change in this country. It was an ad with a pregnant spokeslady for a furniture company. She was just showing off the sofas and the chairs and the beds, the low prices, the sales, all that kind of stuff. She was either white or Latina. It's sometimes hard to tell. You can't tell, black hair and kind of tan skin. You don't know if she's Latina, or she could have even been black for all I know. But that wasn't the point. It was a pregnant lady just doing an ad. There was no point being made by it. It wasn't trying to cause controversy or clickbait or anything like that. It was just the spokesmodel that they use, and she happens to be pregnant. They put her in the ad. That's real change. You know why that's real change? Because when you talk about one certain group getting some sort of representation, okay, that represents that one little group, like Dylan Mulvaney. Okay, so now you've kind of like advertised to the 1% of the people who are transgender. Okay, cool. I don't know, whatever. If it made sense, I would say it makes sense, but in this case, it wasn't. Didn't make sense. But a pregnant spokeswoman? That's 50% of our population are women. And of those, a large portion of them do end up pregnant. And to see themselves just advertising. Not pregnancy, not cribs, nothing like that. Not pregnancy related, I meant. No, she's just advertising furniture. Because we have a society have evolved to the point where we could actually just see a pregnant model and not freak out about it. That's real change. Not the kind of fake change that the liberals have been promoting for the last several years. You know, this is bullshit performative stuff. Anyhow, enough of that. So one of the other ads that I saw was an ad for Prop 50. That's this whole idea that California voters are going to vote to overturn what California voters already voted for, so that the Democrats can gain more seats in the Congress to combat Trump. Well, Gavin is lying. He's deflecting, and above all, he's just trying to garner Democrat votes by fighting Trump. You know, I looked at the commercial and I'm just like, hey, asshole, how about you fight for Californians? Like regular, average Californians. Huh? You know, I recently at my job, I had a review, right? And I risked getting a bad review and upsetting management because I advocated for higher wages for the people that are below me. I get paid significantly more than other people in my position, namely because of my licenses, my talent, my experience, things like that, right? But I advocated for them. I stood up to the management and said, hey, this is my concern. I love my team. You know, I was almost in tears as I pleaded for my company to help these people because I know they're struggling. They're just trying to pay their bills here in California, and that's quite difficult. It's very difficult. You know, but going back to the ad, you know, Gavin is eroding democracy to take away voices and opposition, and he calls it preserving democracy. We don't have to do, here in California, we don't have to do everything that the Republicans propose. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we need to turn red. No, we need to turn purple because we need opposition. We need pushback. You know, you take like the bullet train. You know, people are saying, hey, this is a waste of money. It's not really going to pan out in the future. Maybe we should just scrap it now. But no, the Democrats here in California use it as an excuse to create jobs. That's what they do, to make their job numbers look better. Because frankly, we need to make our jobs look, both federally and state level, our jobs numbers suck. Okay? But you need that pushback. You know, one of the things I would push back on, let's take that money, okay? The bullet train's not going to work out. Let's just take that money and start building drug rehabilitation centers and mental health facilities. There, that's creating jobs, isn't it? But then we could start getting some of these people off the street, especially the young people, the people who have not completely collapsed their lives. But no. And it's not just me. Not just me who's getting sick of this shit. The mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahon, he's a Democrat. I want to just make sure you know that up front here. He published an op-ed in the San Francisco Standard suggesting Governor Newsom refocus his energy on important issues rather than social media antics. You know, he's drawing a lot of attention right now because he wants to run for president. And Matt Mahon, as they say here in the article from ABC San Francisco, a fellow Democrat like Newsom would like to see less online attacks and more action in the real world. This is a quote from him. We've got fundamental issues that challenges our residents every day. And we'd be doing better if Sacramento was doing more. And I want to make it clear that we cannot confuse internet rhetoric with real world results. And he pointed out that California has the highest employment rate in the country, the most expensive housing and energy, and we have half of the nation's unhoused population here. Yeah. We have real issues here in California, and our governor is more worried about running for president. That's it. You know, he was talking about how Newsom was snarky about the Bed Bath and Beyond coming back but not reopening up in stores in here. And Mahon says, I think we need to listen when people offer valid criticisms of our business climate in this case and try not to brush it away, but say, hey, here are the concrete things that we are going to do different. And that was the primary point of his opinion piece. He also went on to talk about Prop 36, the tough on crime ballot measure. Right now, we have made our streets like waiting rooms, the waiting rooms for mental health hospitals and drug treatment centers that hardly exist. So it's time to get serious about this. We need help at the local level, and I want to give a voice to that. He pointed out that since voters approved Prop 36, which included a provision saying that if you committed multiple crimes due to drugs, you were going to go to a drug rehab, and Gavin puts $100 million into the account. Gavin came out and said, you voted for it, you fund it. That's what he told us, citizens. Fact check me. If I'm wrong, please put it in the comment section. Let me know I was wrong. But he said that. He doesn't care what we want. It's only what Gavin wants. Is that what we're supporting? No. Once again, Gavin is the tyrant. He ignores the citizens like he did with the death penalty. We reaffirmed the death penalty. He said, nope, we're not going to do it. We said we want our redistricting done by an impartial panel. We can argue how impartial they really are, but that's a different topic for a different day. No, he's going to force it. He's putting it on the ballot to force Democrat voters to approve the plan. It was not citizen driven. It'd be different if the citizens said, hey, we want to do this. And keep in mind, very interesting fact about this redistricting this fight. In Texas, there was a lawsuit, okay, in 2021 by blacks and Latinos. It worked its way through the courts. It worked its way through the appeal process. Now Texas has to redistrict to include districts that represent the black and the brown people that live there. Cool. Okay, so that's what they're doing. Now, if they do it in a way that satisfies the lawsuit but gets more Republican votes, guess what? Look up the numbers. They still have a better ratio in Texas than California has currently. And California is trying to make that ratio even more lopsided. Huh. Is that democracy? Is that the action of a benevolent governor who cares about his people? No. It's the action of an elite asshole who is doing whatever it takes to get whatever he wants. That's what he is, a petulant little child. That's why I want to fight the dude. I seriously want to get in the ring with Gavin. I don't know the weight class. I don't know his reach. I don't know his ability. I don't give a fuck. That's me. That's who I am. That's who Kid Copious is. I don't care if I get beat up. I just want to take a shot at the guy because he is a king. And the way I view kings and tyrants, he's no different than King George of the 1700s or Hitler of the 1930s and 40s. That's who Gavin is. All right? Doesn't listen to his people, doesn't listen to his citizens. He does what he wants. And are we going to reward that? God, I hope not. So, earlier when I started the show, I was talking about how Democrats have tough gun control, but are soft on gun crimes. And nowhere typifies that more than Chicago. Over the last Labor Day weekend, 35 people were shot. You know that? Yeah. In something like a 50-hour period. They had 20 separate shootings. Yeah. 5 people died. The rest were injured. Trump wants to send the National Guard in to help clean up Chicago, to tamp down on it, to try to get some of these people off the streets. Mayor Johnson of Chicago has signed an executive order called the Protecting Chicago Initiative. Yeah. He says, we've received credible reports that we have days, not weeks, before the city sees some sort of militarized activity by the federal government. We take these threats seriously, and we find ourselves in a position where we must take immediate, drastic action to protect our people from federal overreach. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? 20 different shootings over one 50-hour period. One of those people that got shot was a 17-year-old who was inside her home, and she was hit in the arm. Oh, no. Oh, she was only hit in the arm? No, no, just like this guy. 31-year-old man shot in the leg after getting caught in the crossfire. 25-year-old woman who was shot and injured while driving down the streets. Those are injuries that might not ever heal. Sure, they may not be life-threatening. They might not die from them. But do you want to take a bullet to the knee? Do you know what that does? Do you know what that's going to require for the rest of your life? Getting shot sucks, okay? I'm sure that it's not coming as a big surprise to you. But getting shot sucks. 5 different people lost their lives. 2 women, a 25-year-old woman who was found in the apartment suffering from 2 gunshot wounds to her stomach and 1 to her leg. Imagine the pain she was in. Imagine the fear that she felt. She died. The other victim in the apartment suffered gunshot wounds to both legs. And she's in fair condition in the hospital. You can die from a shot to the leg. Femoral artery bleeds out. But the damage done to that leg, the damage done to the psyche, the damage done to the organs that got hit, those are things that can drastically affect the rest of your life. So when the news kind of plays it off like, they were only wounded, non-life-threatening injuries, really depends on how you define life-threatening. Hey, lots of people, World War II, they had their legs blown off. They were blinded. They lost arms and hands. Were those life-threatening wounds? They survived them, but they had to live with them for the rest of their life. That's why the number of people shot is so important. Let's stop focusing on like, well, only 5 people died, because that's what they do. The media likes to spin it that way. The media never contextualizes what these gunshot wounds are actually going to lead to. One person who's fed up is the former head of the Chicago Police Department, Jody Weiss. He called out the top Democrats in Illinois, arguing that they were afraid of being humiliated by Trump, successfully bringing down crime. This is what he said. The governor and the mayor said they don't want any help. So to me, when you refuse help, you are saying you are happy with those numbers. And that is totally unacceptable in Chicago right now. They say, it's fine, we don't need the government assistance. Worked, didn't it, in D.C.? Yeah. He said, Weiss went on to say, Pritzker walked along a lake in Chicago in the early morning saying, Chicago's safe. And as Weiss pointed out, go walk in the Inglewood neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night. See if you feel safe. He went on to say, I think they're afraid that people will see what can be done if politicians commit to taking action and really want to make a difference. There's only really one reason I could think of, because otherwise it makes no sense. They're afraid that Trump's going to show them up. These politicians work for us. They work for us. But yet all they do is figure out ways to get votes and enrich their lives. That is unacceptable. I don't care if you got an R near your name or a D next to your name. Don't really give a shit. I am tired of politicians working for themselves and not us. They get exorbitant salaries. They make 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times what the average American makes. And what do? They figure out how to get campaign donations by siding with special interest groups. They get into arguments on Twitter so that they can be like, I'm the guy fighting Trump. I don't give a fuck if you fight Trump, Gabby. Get out there and do something. Stand up. Show Californians that you want to help Californians, and then maybe we can vote for you for president. Because I would vote for Matt Mahan, and he's a Democrat. But he speaks the truth. He says some of our policies have failed and we need to change the way we look at it. He went on to further say, and if you look at what Mayor Muriel Bowser has done in D.C., she's embraced it and it's made a huge difference. I wish they would learn from her. Okay, I get it. You hate Trump. But if Trump can help you, let him help you. You are there for the citizens. These people, over just a 50-hour period in Chicago, 30 people, 5 lost their lives. 30 people, though, who survived, have had their lives changed. Their opportunities in life may have diminished. Think about that. You might not be able to work your job because your job, requires you to walk around or to drive or something, and you get shot and you lose an arm, you lose a leg. You spend a year in the hospital as they patch up your bloodied body, and you lose your job and you lose your economic freedom. You lose your house over being shot. It's unacceptable. I live in California, as you might know. So I focus on the Democrats because I don't really know what it's like to live in a red city or a red state. I hear horror stories, okay? I don't know if I believe them all, but I'm sure they have their own issues. But one thing that they don't have is they don't have radical DAs and government officials, governors, state DAs, but all those people siding with the criminals. They side with the common folk, the people who are just trying to scrape by and find a little happiness in this world. That's it. That's who I stand with. All right, so letter of the week is B. Bad ideas. I'm going to go through these quick because there's not much to say on them. First of all, I really don't agree with Florida trying to end vaccines or ending vaccines for school children. I think there are a lot of diseases out there, polio, things like that vaccines have proven to be very effective against, and I think we should keep that up. I mean, honestly, that's how I feel. It's a bad idea. I don't care that a Republican is helming it. And on the same topic, I don't really care that Trump likes RFK. I thought it'd be interesting to watch as RFK kind of threw open some things and maybe made some stinks that maybe led to something. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I mean, think about it. I don't know if any of you play sports or fantasy football or whatever like that, but sometimes you draft a player and you just kind of want to see how they're going to go. You think they might have a breakout, but you start to realize, they're not going to factor. You dump them. And I kind of think that's where we're at with RFK. I don't think he's accomplished. Like, for example, I think Elon Musk and Doge, no matter what the results were, I think they did sort of shine a light on some of the wasteful spending that's been going on. I think that was successful. I don't think RFK is being successful. The other B, borders. I'm not xenophobic. I'll tell you that right now. I know people around me who back me up. They know that I'm interested in other people's cultures, in other people's beliefs, in why other people believe what they believe or do what they do or whatever it is. I ask questions. Honestly, the other day, I saw some hot sauce sitting on a table that I'd never seen before. And I sent it to somebody I know who speaks Spanish and loves to explain Mexican culture to me because I wanted to know what it was. But there's more to the border than just immigrants. The flow of counterfeit medicines. I've talked about this for years now. Fake medicines coming in from China and from other parts of the world that then a grandma takes thinking that she's like holding off a heart attack and boom, she's dead of a heart attack. Dangerous foods. Things that contain ingredients that you might not want. Lead in toys, things like that. The border can stop counterfeit and fake and dangerous stuff. They also stop invasive plants, animals, and insect species. California's large economy, third in the world, fifth in the world, whatever the fuck it is, relies on agriculture. Invasive insects and animals can destroy that. That's true. Look it up. The border is also there to try to stop the flow of children coming in and out of the country through trafficking. And yeah, drugs and illegal immigration. We need tougher borders. Not because I don't like people who aren't like me. Who the fuck is like me? If you've ever met me, you know that I'm in a very small class of people. Okay? There's not a lot of people out there like me. The fact that we might have similar skin tone really doesn't matter much to me. I don't give a shit what the skin tone is. If you're cool, you're cool. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole. I said my heroes were the Revolutionary War fighters. World War II, I was watching Band of Brothers. If you've never seen it, it's leaving Netflix soon, but if you have a chance, binge it. It's 10 episodes. The last episode was about the failure of the upper echelon leadership and how it was up to the sergeant. Sergeants, they're not the enlisted people. They're not the people who went they're enlisted, but they're not the people who went through like ROTC or college and can be like lieutenants and captains and all of that. Basically, if you just come in as a enlisted soldier, the highest you get up to is somewhere in like first sergeant, gunnery sergeant, something like that. Don't quote me on that because I don't know all my ranks. Yeah. But, I'm that sergeant. I'm the guy who wants to be in the trenches, leading the team through bullets. I'm not concerned with optics. I'm not concerned with public perception. I'm concerned with keeping my team alive. That's what a sergeant does on the battlefield. They're not hiding behind the lines. They are the lines. I care about those grunts. And in another way, you could put that is the workers, the grinders, the people who are out there just trying to earn enough to get by and find a little happiness in life. I shun the elite, the people like Gavin, Newsom, and I despise the stupid, hate-filled assholes who attack people from being different. But while I believe that, I also don't take my eye off the bigger picture. The bigger picture, especially here in California, is we have fundamental issues that need to be addressed. And our current political party, the Democrats who run California, are not addressing that. We need lower energy costs. We need lower housing costs. We don't need to walk down our streets just praying that crazy homeless guy over there isn't going to attack us as he's sitting there screaming about killing motherfuckers. I've had that happen to me. When I went back to the building that I was inspecting, the doors were locked because everybody inside that building heard this guy screaming about how he was going to murder people. I was the closest person to that person. Do I need to spend my days wondering if I'm going to have to crack somebody over the head with my wrench or my baton? Is that too much to ask? If Gavin wants to be president, great. Earn it, bitch. Don't sit there and con people into voting for you. Don't pressure people into voting for you. Because that's all I've seen out of you, you goddamn tyrant. You are the tyrant, Gavin. I know you're not going to hear this, but I hope the people who do hear this realize that he's the one acting like a tyrant. And that there are Democrats and there are Republicans out there who do not believe in these extreme views and this lazy way of governing. Get back to work, mofos. That sounded pretty cheesy, didn't it? Anyhow, you know what? I like cheese. I'm Kid Copious. Purple State Party. So are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding, because you're the backbone of America. And you know what? Like I always say, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. 5, 6, 7, 8, dance it out. Love ya.